Most companies have learned how to attract people to their websites or their online stores. The challenge is converting those visitors into customers. In an increasingly crowded and noisy market, how can we develop the right strategies to get people to move from looking to buying? I'm Jane Singer, and thank you for being part of our international community of industry leaders here on A Seat at the Table. Today we're joined by Carl Weische, co-founder of Accelerated and an expert in CRO. That's conversion rate optimization. Accelerated works with some of the fastest scaling D2C brands, helping them grow from 8 to 10 figures. In this podcast, Carl will be sharing what marketers can do to boost their conversion rates, the role that frequency plays in driving sales growth, and benchmarks for conversion based on working with real brands. A big part of growing sales is having the right talent in key sales and marketing roles. However, finding and recruiting those people can be a challenge, especially when competitors are also searching for good people. That's why top corporations and even smaller enterprises rely on AsiaNet consultants to help them fill key positions. Since 1988, AsiaNet has been working in partnership with its global clients to help them make the right strategic hires. They have a well-earned reputation for being able to fill even those difficult-to-fill positions. So if you need to recruit new talent, or you think that you might be doing that soon, head on over to their website. That's asianetconsultants.com, asianetconsultants.com. I'll leave a link in the show notes. Now let's sit down with Carl and find out how we can make our marketing more effective and start converting more leads into sales. Carl, I'm really happy that you're able to join us here on A Seat at the Table, because I think your area of expertise is something that so many people who listen to this show are really wrestling with, particularly nowadays when everyone is trying to figure out how to get more out of their digital marketing, especially now that digital marketing costs have gotten so expensive. And of course, that brings us to conversion rates, a topic on which you're an acknowledged expert.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to record this episode with you today.
So why don't we just jump right in? From what I find when I talk to people about marketing, there's a lot of misunderstanding amongst marketers, especially those who don't have years of experience at doing this, in what they should be looking at in terms of conversion rates. I find that people do tend to have somewhat unrealistic expectations that they're going to run a campaign or put an ad up or put up a website, and that people are just going to come running and buying. Yeah. Can you give us some perspective on that based on your experience?
For sure. So what we see usually happening is that our conversion rates and also the effectiveness of a marketing campaign tends to improve over time, right? So most of the times what we like to do in the beginning is testing a lot of stuff, right? Because in the beginning, you need to figure out what's the perfect product market fit and how can you position your offer so it makes sense for the target audience to buy. And you're probably going to come up with like 10, 15 different angles of positioning the product and how you can display it and how you talk about the product benefits. And then some of them may work and some of them may not work, right? So what I want to do, especially for marketers in the early stages, is give them the awareness that they should always try to iterate and try to keep testing, because then over time, they're going to find the best angle. And like once they find a winning angle, for example, or winning creative, then they can start iterating and improving that. But it's not, in 9 out of 10 cases, you're not going to have a winner in the beginning. So that's also the main thing with conversion rates and conversion optimization. It's good to keep testing, and it's good to keep iterating and seeing how the market responds to the changes that we make, and then just experiment a lot until we find something that's winning and then doubling down on that strategy.
That makes a lot of sense. And I think that from what you're saying, people have to look at this as somewhat of a long game as opposed to a quick fix.
Yeah.
Now, when you look at this, aside from being able to iterate and test different things, as you're saying, how much, once you have something that you feel is reasonably good, how much extra benefit do you see, or I'm not really phrasing that very well, but do you see conversion rates increase over time just because the same audience has been exposed to this more frequently, or doesn't that matter?
Definitely. So what we see is a compounding effect over time where we have multiple touch points with the prospects and the audience. There's this rule floating around in the e-commerce realm that people need around 7 touch points before they buy the product, right? So a lot of direct response marketers, they just want to instantly convert a new cold prospect that has never been introduced to the product or the offer before. But usually in e-commerce, what we see is it takes around 7 to 10 touch points between the audience and the potential offer before they buy. And this may happen over Facebook, then they go on the Instagram, social media, then they are getting a retargeting email, then they go on Google and type in the brand, and then they may see another ad on TikTok, and then 2 weeks go by, and then they see another retargeting ad on Facebook, and then they decide to buy, right? So it's usually a longer conversion cycle. So the longer time you send out ads to them, you send out emails to them, and you kind of warm them up as an audience, the higher your conversion rate is going to be. So it's not going to be that you enter a new cold audience and you have a really high conversion rate from the get-go. It's rather that over time, once you improve the product market fit and once like the audience is familiar and has the awareness for the product and the offer, that then you're going to see an increase in conversions.
It's sort of like, I suppose, when you embark on a fitness program, that you have to continually go to the gym on a regular schedule. Yeah. And it takes a long amount of time. And like you're saying, experimenting with what's going to work, that it's not something that can be achieved just overnight, no matter how much effort you put in initially.
Yeah, definitely. And that's also the thing that we see with the brands that are highly successful, like these 8 and 9 figure D2C brands. What they do is they always try out new stuff, right? What has been working the last year, or what has been working the last couple of months may not work tomorrow or the day after. So we see a huge shift happening in brands of, for example, how they build sales funnels now, or how they utilize landing pages instead of just pushing the traffic to a collection page or product page. So it's always shifting of how they do the ads and how they sell them and how they do the retention in the backend too. So for example, trends that what we see right now is what I was just mentioning. A lot of people work with landing pages and funnels, and a lot of people also focus on building communities in the backend to retain the customer further and really build a strong connection with the existing customers so that they can get a great customer lifetime value in the backend. So this is an exciting trend that we see now, brands jumping on. But maybe next year there's a new trend coming, right? You never know what happens. Nobody saw that TikTok came and just took over a lot of ad spend from Facebook and the other channels. And now it's like a huge platform, right? So I think as a marketer and as an e-commerce brand owner, the best thing you can do is always try to keep at that zeitgeist, right? To always try to find the cutting edge of the market and always keep experimenting and not get comfortable in the situation that you're in. Because maybe something external come around, like the iOS 14 update or like an economic crisis or whatsoever, and you couldn't see it before. And that changes a lot of stuff for a lot of brands.
Yeah, I think that's so true. I think that on the one hand, you want the consistency, so you're not jumping around. But on the other hand, you also have to be able to get onto some of these trends when they come up, because the audience will not necessarily abandon, right, a previous platform, but they will be shifting some attention to the new one. So you don't want to, as you're saying, overlook those opportunities.
Yeah, definitely. What a mentor taught me is that there's always a window of opportunity, right? And either way, you can jump in the beginning and you can basically take the full advantage of the whole window. But at some time, if you just let it pass by, then you're not going to be able to jump on anymore. Example given that UGC creatives, right? UGC creatives have been huge last year. But nowadays, the audience is really familiar with the content, and now it doesn't work that great anymore because everybody's seeing it all the time. So now you need a new kind of creative that you can give to the audience so that you can get their attention in the market now.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're right. People don't realize that the audience gets bored of something when so much of it has been put in front of them. It starts to burn itself out.
Yeah, definitely.
Now, I think that right now we're heading into what looks like perhaps more challenging economic times, which prompts a lot of people to think, well, maybe I really don't need to be doing the marketing at the moment, or maybe they've built up a certain level of success. So they start to say, well, we're pretty good now. We don't really need to continue. How important is it to have something that's continuous, whether it's big or small, versus just doing these, sort of the big blast every now and again?
Great question. So what we see, and I really like that you pointed out that we, for example, are in uncertain economic times right now that change a lot for a lot of brands. So what we saw happening with some of the clients that we are working with in the e-commerce realm is that they were just not making the numbers that they were doing before, right? They were planning certain budgets and there were prognosis, they were doing certain forecasts, but they were just not hitting them anymore because the consumer behavior changed so drastically that the audience that they were selling to is not buying anymore with the way that they are selling it to them right now. So now they need to find a new way of selling to the audience and a new offer that's attractive to the audience so that they can scale up again. So what we saw with the brands over the past couple of months, the brands that were complacent and the brands that didn't change anything in their strategy for a long time, they were the ones that were struggling the most in these times. And the brands that were able to adapt quickly to the changes and the environment that was happening, those are the ones that were winning in this whole difficult economic period.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. And a lot of companies think it's counterintuitive and they feel it doesn't matter. But in a sense, when you see a brand that was active and then they disappear, the perception, I think, from the market, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that that company might have faced bad times, right? Well, why are they pulling back? Or we used to see their ads all over the place and we don't see it now, or not just ads, but could be any kind of promotions that they're doing. People assume, right, that perhaps things are not good. Whereas when you see a company that's very active, you assume that they're successful.
Yeah, definitely. So it's so important as a brand to always keep reinventing oneself, right? Because otherwise something happens or a competitor will just come and like steal your market share. I mean, we see it all the time, even with like the biggest companies like Apple and Facebook. Maybe Apple brings up the iOS 14 update and then Facebook loses a lot of market share due to that, even if it's like one of the biggest tech companies in the world. So I feel like nobody should get complacent because it could happen to anybody.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, like you said before, nobody saw TikTok coming.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you just don't know who might be the next big competitor, where they're coming from or why. But,
Yeah.
the importance of staying ahead of the curve and always sort of having, a horse in the race, I think is critical.
Yeah, definitely. One interesting fact that I saw is that in the S&P 500, so like the 500 biggest companies, they have a big rotation going on over the past 2 or 3 decades with all of the tech coming up, right? These big companies that have been around the block for decades on decades, maybe even hundreds of years, they are so comfortable because they're doing a couple of billions in revenue, but then some new tech startup with a VC back just eats them up, right? So it's really interesting if you look at these big companies, how fast they're changing in the S&P 500, and that should give you something to think about, right? Because those are like the 500 biggest companies in the world, and they are rotating really quickly, and they are losing the ranks, and they're dropping out of it because somebody new is taking over.
Yeah, that's so true. And I saw that same study or a similar one where they showed how long in the past it took for a company to get to be in the S&P 500 versus how long it's taken some of the ones who were there now. And some of the other ones who are there now got there very quickly, as you're pointing out. So, you can never rest on your laurels. And it's interesting because as we head into 2023 and perhaps a more challenging market, it's in my point of view, and I don't know if you see it this way, it's opening up huge opportunities for marketers because so many other people will be pulling back that those people who go in will really get more bang for their buck, so to speak.
Yeah, definitely. I really like the point that you just made. Like, you shouldn't be afraid to double down these times right now. You should rather push even harder because competition is becoming less and less, right? A lot of people are afraid to increase their marketing budgets. A lot of people are struggling. A lot of people are not iterating or improving. So I feel like in these, like, I don't want to call it a crisis, but in these like more uncertain times, it's easier for you than over the past couple of years to just go on the market and really build up your brand.
Yeah, it's really interesting the way that works. And yet, most companies will cut marketing.
Yeah.
They'll say, oh, what's the first thing we can cut? Oh, we'll just cut back on marketing. And it'll be such a pity because they'll sort of lose everything that they had built up previously. Whereas, new people will be able to jump in, even people who essentially had no presence. This is sort of the good time for some of those new guys to be able to get in.
Yeah.
Now, when you look at conversion rates, I know it's hard to say, right? Because every brand is different, every market is different. But are there things that you have seen based on your experience that tend to move the needle more than other things?
Great question. So the things that move the needle the most in terms of the conversion rate are the foundations. So of the foundations, I'm talking about the product market fit and the offer, and then also you can increase the user motivation to buy, and then also build the trust to them, kind of build this emotional connection with them almost. So what I mean by those three levers that you can pull is that with the product market fit, you need to position your product and your offer in the way that it really resonates with the market. That is what I mean with product market fit. So you have a great understanding of the people that you're selling to. And I don't mean this usual marketing persona where you say, this is Stephanie, she's 23 years old and she's an economics student, right? I'm more talking about the psychological aspects of Stephanie is afraid of using a water bottle that breaks easily, right?
Right.
And in the past, she usually has been buying water from Fiji, but now she is looking for like a new product. So I'm talking more about the psychological aspects of what are her pain points, beliefs, motives, and desires, and then also how is she expressing that? Like, what language is she using? What slang is she using? What metaphors and analogies is she telling? And then you can basically use all of that and then position your product. Because if we can position a product in the way that the benefits and the value proposition really resonates with our audience, then they're going to buy more, right? So it's not about like the polishing the website or making it really beautiful. It's more about making it really resonating with them. And then the second lever being the offer is that the offer needs to make sense. It needs to be an irresistible offer. What I always like to recommend to people is $100 million offers by Alex Hormozi, because he talks about a lot of different aspects that play into creating an irresistible offer, right? In terms of how can you make the pricing, how can you create urgency, and how can you get people to act quickly, right? So those are different factors that play into the offer. And then the last one, this is a huge one, is trust. I always like to say that in marketing, the biggest currency is attention. And in selling, in the conversion, the biggest currency is trust, because people need to trust you as the brand that your claims are actually true, right? Because everybody can make the most outrageous claims on the website, but they need to have trust established with you to think that your claims are trustworthy, right? So those are the three biggest levers in order to really increase conversions in the beginning. And then over time, if you already pulled those three levers, then it's more about fine-tuning the funnel and polishing it and tweaking smaller things.
Yeah, I think that's really such a great summary. And it sounds easy, but when you actually try to execute on it, it's really, really difficult, because you think about it. And when you have to put it in terms of your own product, it's not that easy to do, particularly when you're trying to establish that level of trust. Reviews have done a lot to help brands establish trust. But now, I don't know what you're seeing, but it seems that consumers are even becoming doubtful about reviews because there has been a lot of talk around fake reviews and things like that. What are you seeing? Where can companies do better to establish trust?
I also really like this question because, as you said, and as you were pointing out, only having reviews on the website just doesn't do it anymore. So the best thing that you can do is create an omnipresence as an e-commerce brand. What I mean with omnipresence is that no matter where the prospect is looking for, they will find something about you. If they go on Google, they will find your brand and they will find articles about the brands and Amazon maybe, or happy customers. If they go on Instagram, Facebook, Pinterest, Bing, whatever it may be, they will always find some sort of channel or medium where they can have a touch point with you and then check you out. And then the second thing you can do on the website is, on top of having reviews, is working with all of the things that I just mentioned. So you need to have press releases, for example, right? What we like to do is look at an audience and understand what are the media they are consuming. For example, like the TV channels, or what are the magazines that they are reading, right? So for example, it could be something like they are watching ABC News or BCC, or like what they are called in terms of channels. And then they read magazines like Vogue or Forbes. And then if you can get testimonials or publications in exactly those channels and magazines and put it on a website, then those are also great ways of establishing trust, because your audience already reads these magazines and watches these channels every single day. So they've established this trust. So you can basically take the trust from them, right? And then the last thing that we like to do is the use of authority figures. So for example, let's say I'm selling a skincare product, like a cream for the face or something. We like to work with a doctor. Or let's say I'm selling fashion, I'm selling hoodies, I would work with an established fashion influencer, right? So I would use a figure of authority, like a person with a lot of trust associated with them, and then also position them on the website to have a testimonial or like a good review. And then if you manage to use all of these different like sources of trust, then you can really build the trust. And then also people are going to believe that your reviews are real and not doubt them anymore, because you have the omnipresence on all of the different channels. And then also on your website, you're utilizing all of these different aspects that play into creating trust.
I think that makes a lot of sense. You do have to have that sort of 360-degree presence so that people have that, like you said, the credibility, the trust factor. Now, when we get to creating that irresistible offer, that's another thing that is not as easy to do as it is to talk about. I think most people, when they hear that, they immediately think discounting, right? It's, oh, well, how much can we say the price is, and how much can we, at least on the website or on the offer, whatever it is, discount it. How do you see it? What do you see working with regard to that? We're going to take a quick break now, and then we'll be right back.
We were hiring when we were making 50 to 100K monthly losses.
And why? Welcome to episode 1.
I can't think of a single founder who's been around for a decent amount of time in business who hasn't had their tunnel of year. This was that year. We're going to be okay, yeah, Sheree. Some are going to hear this and think, you TDP. But hear me out. You only have to do the math to understand that very soon we were $500,000 down.
So it's really easy to just slap a discount on something and say, okay, now we have a great offer. But people are also getting accustomed by seeing discounts all the time. And you're also going to take value from your brand if you just discount everything all the time. What you do want to create is some sort of bargain feeling, but you don't necessarily need a discount for that. It's just that in the mind and in the perception of the customer, they are getting the product for a bargain. So what you can be doing, for example, is you can frame the offer like being highly valuable, like blow up the perceived value in the mind of the prospect, and then sell it to them for like a low price compared to all of the value that they're getting. So for example, if I'm selling this water bottle to you, I would not only say it's a water bottle, I would say it hydrates you, you can take it everywhere, it's perfect in your day-to-day routine. And I would talk about all of the benefits. So in your mind, it's like a huge value, even though it's just a water bottle, right? And then if I say, and in your mind, you would maybe associate like $100 to it. And then I say, oh, Jane, it only costs $10. You would think, oh, that's a bargain for all of the value that I'm getting. So you kind of want to create this emotion and this sense for the prospect.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot more sense than, like you said, just slapping a discounted price, because you end up being in the race to the bottom because there's always someone who'll offer it cheaper. So eventually you end up moving product at no profit for yourself. When you look at marketing and you see what other people are doing, particularly, focusing on conversion rates, what do you feel is the biggest mistake, or maybe there's more than one that you want to call out, that you consistently see marketers making as when you start to work with someone and you're like, oh, we see this all the time? What might that be?
The biggest thing is probably looking at other stores where you know that they're successful and doing good numbers, and then just copying what works for them. We see this in the marketing bubble a lot with the people, that they just copy each other's stores, and now every store looks the same, even though it doesn't work for every audience, right? So we have this like one huge store, and they have been running thousands of experiments and thousands of tests with their audience, and now it's like hyper targeted to this specific audience. And then if the other stores copy it, it just will not work for them. So I think that's the biggest thing, that people think there's some quick fix or there's like a shortcut for them where they can just copy and paste like another landing page on another store. And this is the biggest mistake usually that marketers run into, not only for conversions, but for everything you do in marketing and selling, that if you want a quick fix or a shortcut, you're just not going to be successful, because you need to put a lot of effort into it to make something work.
Oh, absolutely. I see this all the time. People just want to see what someone else is doing. The first thing they want to know is, well, what's this other guy doing? And how do we do the exact same thing? And as you're pointing out, and it's 100% correct, is you have to differentiate and do something different and try to capture the people who don't like what the other person is doing, but perhaps would want something different that you could offer, as opposed to just trying to be a duplicate of what they're doing.
Yeah.
Now, when you're talking about conversion rates, and you had mentioned about the fact that it's a bit of a long haul, and I know it will vary with different products in different markets, but roughly, what might a timeline look like for someone who's starting? I mean, I think that, people want to know that, and they want to know, well, am I looking at doing this for a year, or, or is it sort of a 5-year journey?
It's an ongoing journey. So there's like no, as we were talking about earlier, it's really important that you keep iterating and keep testing. Same with the creatives or the media buying or performance marketing strategy. You will never be at a point where you just keep it running and don't touch it for like a longer period, right? Maybe sometimes it runs for a month or 2 months or 3 months, but then you would tweak something in it, or you run new creatives or a new campaign or new offer something. And the same, you have to think about your website and your funnels and your landing pages. Like over time, let's say over 3, 6, 12 months, you need to do like a new look, a new feel, a new setup, just to keep on the zeitgeist of everything that's happening. So I would say initially it takes around like 3 to 6 months probably to see like the first results and like to optimize the product market fit and everything. And then you can kind of scale it up and then later focus on CRO again. But then it's mostly a really, really ongoing journey with same with like everything that you do in the business.
Wow. Yeah, it's the perspective that you need to have. It's not necessarily what people want to hear, but it's the truth that people have to understand when they get into this. Now, I know that you have co-founded Accelerated. Just can you tell us a little bit about that, what you're doing there, and how you're helping people?
Sure. So we co-founded it, and over the past couple of years, we have been specializing in working with 8-figure D2C brands and then helping them in optimizing their funnels, optimizing their landing pages, and the whole customer journey on the website to boost their conversion rate and their average order value, with the goal of helping them make their ad spend more profitable, right? Getting them a better ROAS, getting them a better marketing efficiency ratio in order for them to be able to scale more profitably, right? Because we have this one level of optimizing paid acquisition and cutting down the cost that we pay per click. And then we have the second level, and that's where we come in, to improve how much they make per click, right? Their earnings per click, basically.
Yeah, well, that's really important. And I think that a lot of people could use a little bit of help with that, because it is a bit daunting, especially when you've never done it before. But even if you have done it, there's just a lot to understand and a lot to be able to manage and analyze. Being able to work with someone with your level of expertise can really help people shorten that timeline a little bit, perhaps, or at least be able to get a better return on what they're doing.
Yeah, definitely. And we've seen this across the board. Like in the beginning, we've been working a lot with 6 and 7 figure brands. And for them, it has been like a day to night difference in running like their paid acquisition efforts, slightly above break even to being highly profitable. And even for brands where we in the beginning thought they wouldn't need any help, like 8-figure brands or 9-figure D2C brands. But still, if we can give them, like, let's say another 5% or 10% increase in efficiency, that's a lot on like the annual revenue that they are doing.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Well, Carl, you've shared so many interesting things with us. Where can people find you? Where can they connect with you?
The best way of connecting with me is on Twitter,
Okay.
Answering all of my DMs. Otherwise, you can also find me on my YouTube channel. Both of them are with my first and last name. So Carl Weische. That's basically the same on all socials.
Okay. And then where can we find your podcast? I know you have a podcast, The Brand Builder Show, and it's an outstanding show that I think a lot of people would enjoy.
Thanks so much. You can find it on like all of the major releases, like Spotify, Apple, and the website.
Okay, well, perfect. I'm going to put the links to all of this in the show notes so that people will more easily be able to get in touch with you. And I want to thank you again for joining me here on A Seat at the Table and for sharing so many valuable insights with us.
Sweet. Thanks so much for having me. It was a pleasure.
I'd also like to thank our sponsor, AsiaNet Consultants. AsiaNet's a specialist in recruiting top talent in Asian markets. Since 1988, AsiaNet has been working in partnership with its global clients to help them make the right strategic hires. They have a well-earned reputation for being able to fill even those difficult-to-fill positions. Learn about how they can help you find the best talent by heading over to their website, asianetconsultants.com. That's asianetconsultants.com. I'll also leave a link in the show notes. Thank you for joining me here on A Seat at the Table. If you enjoyed this episode or learned something from it, I would love to hear about it. If you'd like to support the show, please hit the subscribe button. And if you can take a minute to leave a review on Apple Podcasts or other channels, that would be fabulous. Don't forget to check out our podcast website, seatpodcast.com. That's SEAT podcast.com. If there's something you'd like to share, ideas, suggestions, or comments, please feel free to reach out. I would love to hear from you. Thank you again for joining me and being part of our international community. I'm Jane Singer, and I'll see you in the next podcast episode.